Hi and welcome to the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast for athletes, coaches and professionals who want to achieve their goals faster. I'm David Charlton and I'll be sharing proven methods from leading athletes, coaches and experts that will help you get the most from your talent. Today's show is sponsored by Functional Intelligent Training, who are a sports injury clinic located in Gosforth near Newcastle upon Tyne and specialise in athlete development, nurturing future champions, strength and conditioning support and excellent rehabilitation services. Welcome to episode 44 of Demystifying Mental Toughness. And I haven't recorded an episode of this type for a little while. This episode's going to be a recap episode where I share some observations based on the last 3 fantastic interviews where I had the privilege of talking to Paul McGee, Mark Bennett and Jamie Forrester. Specifically in this episode, we're going to look at confidence, interpersonal confidence. And one of the key things I want you to try and get out of this episode is how you assert yourself in different situations, or maybe how you don't assert yourself in different situations. And I'm going to share a resource at the end of the episode. It'll be in the show notes to be able to help you. So with Paul McGee, we talked a lot about when we choose to deal with situations or not. Certainly when our ego gets in the way, our self-talk gets in the way, and we back off and be quite passive. We discussed dealing with difficult people who've got a fixed mindset. We discussed dealing with criticism and also senior people. Often when we approach senior people, we build a picture up in our head and make it much more difficult than it actually is. But in reality, these people sleep, they breathe, they go to the toilet just like us, and they talk. So trying to treat them like a human is a plus. And then in Mark's episode, we talked about the coach-athlete dynamic, the parent-athlete dynamic, and then the coach-athlete-parent dynamic too, and the overall culture and how that can impact on the athlete. This was a small part of what we talked about. Lastly, Jamie Forrester. He moved around many different clubs in his career. So he was in different dressing rooms, different environments. He came across new coaches, new teammates on a regular basis. In his younger days, he played at Leeds United in the Premier League. When he moved there, he had to deal with training and being in a dressing room with some big personalities who had an awful lot of international caps and recognition behind them. These are all the things that are really helpful. Now, I've mentioned quite a lot of things there. And often these type of situations, some people can get really intimidated by, and it can really distract them. These type of people have got low interpersonal confidence. So what is low interpersonal confidence? Low interpersonal confidence is likely to mean that somebody is less comfortable in group situations, so they might not speak their mind. When there's a situation or a difficulty arises, they'll often keep quiet and they'll fail to act proactively. Also, these type of people can find themselves influenced by others, even when they know that inside they are right. So I'm going to take you through an exercise now, which I hope is going to help you assert yourself better in some different situations and certainly build your awareness of where you're assertive, potentially where you're aggressive, passive, or passive-aggressive. That's right, by the end of this episode, you're going to be a lot more self-aware and in a better place to put in some better strategies and communicate an awful lot better. So let's start with assertiveness. What actually is assertiveness? Some people I've talked to about this trait would say it's about raising your voice. It's about shouting. But actually, that's not the case. It isn't about being loud or threatening. In mental toughness terms, it's about controlling your emotions in stressful situations and then responding in a confident yet direct way. If you're someone who's passive, yes, You might be able to control your emotions well. However, you're going to end up being quiet in different situations. And again, if you're someone who's passive aggressive, you're likely to be able to control your emotions in a lot of situations. However, you're going to be very good at manipulating people, lying to them, and avoiding responsibility. So let's take an example for argument's sake. Say you're about to facilitate a meeting. You're explaining the agenda, you're telling the delegates what they can expect, and you mention, if you use a mobile phone, please turn it off or turn it on to silent, and you won't tolerate it distracting people. This is being assertive. It's being direct and to the point, stating things confidently. Now, the person who's passive, lacks interpersonal confidence, would likely not mention this in their opening statement. And then, when somebody pulls out a mobile phone or gets distracted, they might go on to stare at them, but they'll not say anything. That's passive behaviour. The passive-aggressive person will give them a stare, an evil look, and then they might do a parting comment to someone else, but not directly to the person. That's certainly not assertive behaviour. Just like if you're aggressive and you're unable to maintain control of your emotions and you point the finger at somebody for being distracted on their mobile phone and you raise your voice, that's certainly not assertive behaviour. So you could think of assertiveness on a continuum somewhere between passive and aggressive. So let's take another situation. Perhaps in the workplace or in a sporting environment, you're criticised by a manager or certainly someone senior than you. This happens an awful lot in sport, no doubt about it. If you've got interpersonal confidence, you'll remain calm. You won't lose your cool. You won't fight back. You may choose to walk away from the situation. That's keeping you cool. You may then go on to work out whether that criticism was actually warranted or not. You might look in the mirror, and then you'll choose to deal with it or you won't. Now, the person who's passive will potentially overthink the situation. They'll get in their own heads and worry about the consequences of them actually approaching the person about this criticism. Whereas the person who's assertive won't do that. They'll remain calm, they won't get in their own way, and they'll choose to deal with it in the correct manner. They certainly won't let a fear of conflict silence them, because they're prepared to take the consequences of communicating their feelings and their needs. So if we think about Jamie Forrester, he was a young professional footballer at one point trying to make his way in a dressing room at Leeds United full of top stars. If you're very assertive and confident in that environment, you're going to be quite comfortable having conversations with these guys, with these players. You certainly won't be anxious. You also won't feel like you've got something to prove to them in the conversations. So your emotions will remain in check. You'll be able to defend yourself when you're criticised. You won't sulk. You won't go quiet. You're going to have clear boundaries and seek to defend yourself from being exploited or attacked. And you'll do that in a calm manner. And this is an important quality for any youngster in football or rugby or in any team sport, especially someone who wants to make it to the top of their profession. And likewise, when you're in the business space, maybe you've just recently been promoted to a managerial role and you're trying to impress the people senior and above you. Having that calmness and that confidence to make decisions, to take responsibility for what you say and what you do is really, really important. You don't want to get into a situation where you play the blame game, where you blame other people when things don't go your way. The person with interpersonal confidence certainly doesn't do that. What they do is they're assertive, they're confident in themselves, they look to control what it is they can about a certain situation. Now let's think about compliments. Again, if you're assertive, you're likely to be very happy to dish out compliments to your teammates, to your workmates. That won't faze you. You'll also be very comfortable receiving compliments. Are you like me or some other people where you receive a compliment and you really just don't know how to respond and react? You won't be that type of person. So I'm hoping this episode has helped you step back and reflect and think about how you've dealt with different situations and how other people actually deal with different situations. I'd like you to really consider how an assertive person would deal with compliments or criticism, how a passive person deals with a conversation with a loved one, how an aggressive person responds to criticism, and then in the situation like I mentioned earlier, when you're actually doing a meeting or in that type of environment and somebody's mobile goes on, what does passive-aggressive behaviour look like? So what I'd like you to do, I'd like you to have a look in the show notes and you'll find a document which is going to help guide you through a variety of different exercises linked to interpersonal confidence. It's also going to give you some ideas around what aggressive behaviour, what passive behaviour, and what passive-aggressive behaviour is actually like. Because let's face it, in life, in sport, in work, relationships are so important. And relationships, if managed the incorrect way or poorly, can be the thing that actually goes on to really distract you. And it might mean that you're very unhappy for periods of time. It might mean that your focus goes, that you really lose track of where you're trying to go. So on that theme, I would like to also bring it to your attention, also in the show notes, is a link to the Focused Athlete Checklist. This is a resource I've put together in order to help athletes in sport remain on track. It's very easy to get lost, to become indecisive and unclear on where you want to go to. This resource is going to help bring back that clarity and help you get clear on where it is that you want to go. Enjoy and have a great week. I'd like to give a big thanks to today's sponsors, Functional Intelligent Training, who are a sports injury clinic located in Gosforth, near Newcastle upon Tyne, and specialise in athlete development, nurturing future champions, strength and conditioning support, and excellent rehabilitation services. Thank you for listening to Demystifying Mental Toughness today. To sign up for tips and advice to help you be the best that you can be, go to www.sport-excellence.co.uk and sign up to the Mental Edge newsletter.